Welcome to this platform. And this lesson, I am going to show you how you can solve quadratic equations by completing the square method. All right, so if you have not subscribed to this channel, please go ahead and click on the subscribe button so that you can be a member of this platform, and then you can always come here for more videos. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do here is uh, remind you that the standard form of any quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. So, but then we say that a cannot be 0. But we know that a, b, c must be real numbers. Okay? So a, b, c are members of the real numbers. Okay? All right, this is just a matter of notation. Don't worry too much about that. All right, let's go. All right, so coming here, I know that a is 2, b is -8, and c is positive 6. All right, so these are the numbers I'm using, okay? It's A, B, C. All right, so the first step is to actually try to isolate C, constant term, which is number 6 right here. So we're going to make sure we move it to the right-hand side by subtracting 6 from both sides. So what we're going to do here is to subtract 6 from both sides of the equation. And when we do that, we get 2x squared minus 8x is equal to -6. Now it's going to be negative now because you're subtracting from both sides. So let's go ahead and just put step 1 over here. So that's the first thing we have done. Okay. So now we now have the equation looking like this. So what we're going to do next is to make sure that we divide uh, both sides by a. Okay. We're going to divide through by a. So what I mean by a is you're going to divide. Let me use a different color. So this a here, which is equal to 2, you're going to divide each term by a, which is dividing everywhere by 2. And you're going to cross that out, and you have x squared minus 4x is equal to -3. It's good. All right. So this equation is very, very important. So this is going to be step 2. All right. So we're going to move on to the next step now. So the next step here is the key because we're trying to complete the square. Okay. So only x has a square now. So -4x does not have a square. So what we can do here is to try to complete the square by following this procedure. So you see this -4 here, which is b, the new b here, okay, which is not represented like as the new b. So that -4, we're gonna just bring it down, drop it down. It's gonna be -4. So you are gonna divide it by 2. Always divide it by 2. Every time you will divide it by 2, regardless of whatever that number is. You will divide it by 2 and then square that. This is the procedure. First, divide that number by 2, and then you take a square of that. Cool. So we know that -4 divided by 2 is -2, and then we just put a square on this. So do not simplify. Just leave it this way. Leave it this way, okay? So we're going to call this one step 3. This is what we have done. Now we're not going to go back. We're now going to go back to that step 2 and rewrite it like that. So we're going to write x squared minus 4x. And then you see this new guy we got here, this -2 to the squared, we will add it to both sides. We'll add that -2 to the squared on both sides of the equation. So remember that it's going to be equal to -3. So you can see that this is the equation that we have. We're gonna now add in this -2 to the squared on both sides. So I had -3 before, but now I'm going to add in positive of -2 squared. So what I mean by that is like add, okay? All right, so this is what we're getting. All right, so what we can just do here is just make sure we simplify the right-hand side just to make it easy to understand. So I'm going to simplify the right-hand side and just leave the left-hand side alone. So -3 plus, So negative 2 to the squared means negative 2 times negative 2. And negative 2 times negative 2 will be negative. It will be positive 4, not negative anymore. So we have to be extremely careful here. So it's always going to be positive. Okay, negative 4. But when we get to the left-hand side, look at the magic. So I'm going to collect this x, ignore the 4x, negative 4x, whatever that is, and then collect the negative 2. So that's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to do x and negative 2, and I'm going to put the square now. See, look what I did. So I picked the variable x from the x squared, and I picked the negative 2. Wrap them up and ignore the middle term and put that square there. So this process here, process in step 3, and coming down to this step right here, is completing the square. All right, meaning that if you expand this result here, this x minus 2 all squared, it should give back x squared minus 4x and negative 2 all squared. Okay, so that's what you do. All right, so from here, we're now going to combine this negative 3 plus 4 to get positive 1. So that means x minus 2 the squared is going to give 1. And then what we're going to do now is use the square root method. By squaring both sides, taking the square root of both sides, we'll be able to solve for the variable. So we will take the square root of both sides. So take the square root of both sides and not forget the plus or minus right there. So you can still see that we had 1. Okay, so taking the square root of both sides, square and the square root will go away, and then you're left with x minus 2 is equal to, when you take the square root of both sides, always make sure you have plus or minus on the right hand side. So we have plus or minus. The square root of 1 is 1. So what I can do now is add 2 to both sides of the equation. So it becomes x is equal to plus or minus 1 plus 2, because I'm adding 2 to both sides, cross out this negative 2. So now we're going to get two answers. The first one will be x is equal to, yes, positive 1 plus 2. And positive 1 plus 2 will be 3. Or you're going to do the negative 1 now. So it will be negative 1 plus 2. Negative 1 plus 2 is 1, which means your answers will be positive 3, comma, positive 1. And this is how you can use completing the square method to solve this particular problem. So there can be other problems that are a little bit challenging, a little bit, complicated, and you can always do the same. I hope this is helpful a little bit, and I will see you on the next lesson.